So who's in charge of culture at your organization? Does it come from the bottom up? Does it start from the top down? Does it meet and cycle and circle somewhere in between? Culture is difficult, but it's so important. We're going to talk about it next. Matt McGinnes joins me on Purpose Under Pressure. Well, welcome back. My name's Bryan, and this is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about developing sales and leadership success on purpose and under pressure. It's brought to you by the professional sales and leadership training team at Sandler by the Ruby Group. You'll find them in Akron and in Columbus, Ohio. They're in Jacksonville, Florida. They're in Capital Region, New York. They're wherever you are. And I've seen them go to all ends of this great country to serve their customers and take care of business in the right way. They do things personally. They do things on purpose, which is why I like them as part of this show. And they do things based on how you want to do them. Or do you have some goals? Do you have some ideas on what you're trying to accomplish? Do you have some size ranges that you're trying to be within, certain customers that you'd like to reach? How do you want to do it? Do you just want to guess and hope and pray? Or do you want to do it on purpose? When it comes to sales and revenue and leadership and organizational growth, I think on purpose is the right way to do it. And if you think so too, you should reach out. You can connect with the Ruby Group online at therubygroup.sandler.com. The Ruby Group, master the pressure, lead with purpose, and deliver results. Leading with purpose. That's what I want to talk about today, because a lot of times we talk about sales and we talk about growth, but I'll tell you what, in this era of heavy, fast growth, expectations, revenue, projections, stock options, sometimes it seems like growth at all costs for every reason is the only option and the only thing that matters. And I think people matter more, and I think purpose matters at least as much. And I think when you're growing for the right reasons with the right people built for the long haul, when you've got a leader that understands that and an organization that supports that, I think that's the sweetest spot. And I want to talk about that a little bit today with Matt McGinnes. He's president and CEO at the Cypress Companies, Inc. in Akron, Ohio. Matt, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Thank you, Bryan. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. You heard my preamble here about organizational growth and growing things big. I want to talk to you about that. Tell me more about you and about the Cypress Companies in general so that we can talk about all the good things first and then about kind of how we got there.
Sure, happy to do that. So the Cypress Companies, as you mentioned, located in Akron, Ohio, our roots as Cypress go back to 95, but they actually go back about 20 years before that, where a group of investors got together and started buying private companies and adding along the way. In 95, those investors split 3 different ways. We are one branch off that tree, and we have continued as such. So we have 5 industrial, manufacturing, and 1 distribution companies. They're located all in the Midwest. And, you know, we're happy to be a group of private companies with our own management teams, our own banking relationships, and they pretty much make their own decisions. But we, Cypress, try to be the glue between them and help to share best practices and lend a hand when things get challenging. But that's probably the overview of what we are.
Why do the 5 organizations, or in any situation, why do the companies within an umbrella need the umbrella to stay on track and kind of be that glue for them? What could go wrong otherwise?
Yeah, well, I like to think we sit in a great spot between, let's say, the sole proprietor, founder who has their one company that they began, and maybe today's world of private equity, where you have many companies sitting under a highly professional, institutionalized ownership. So I think we try to bring the best of professional management along with that human-centric focus that you talked about. I think literally driving into work today, I was listening to a podcast. They were interviewing Howard Schultz from Starbucks. Mm-hmm. And when they asked him what he's trying to do, or what he was trying to do in that company, was a performance-oriented company through a lens of humanity. And I love the way he said that. And I think it lines up with kind of how you kick this thing off. But that's really what we're all about, is trying to take the best of the single companies and marry it to the best of the professional managers.
So tell me a little bit about you, Matt. As the president and CEO, I assume that you have a large part in at least being a part of that vision for the company. And I assume that a lot of that comes from who you are. So talk to me a little bit about your purpose and maybe also how that kind of conveys into the operation of the entire organization.
Yeah, I've been at Cypress now almost 20 years, and we're a small organization. I'm the last guy we hired in 2008.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so it's there is a lot that had come before me, but I feel like I'm finally maybe just getting to the point where I've been here long enough to say that I've been here, quote, a while. Um, so the reason I bring that up is that because in coming in here, I was fortunate to be walking into a group of companies with this wonderful, inclusive, collaborative culture that I honestly thought I understood before I got here, but it's even better than I thought it was.
Okay.
And so I take my role very seriously as one of the people, along with my business partner, who sit in all the board meetings. We're in all the cash flow calls with our companies. We're in all the president's meetings. These are recurring meetings that we do, and we see, quote, everything. And so our responsibility is to feed that back productively to the part of the group that needs to know that. So if somebody struggled with a customer not paying on time, what did they do? How did they get them to pay? Somebody struggled in a working capital pinch as a customer scaled up quickly. What did they do? How did they get the cash? Somebody's looking for a better way to communicate with their lender. Well, we've got an example for that too. Probably COVID was unfortunately kind of the shining example of when this really came to bear, where we had 5 companies addressing these never before seen challenges. I need a policy for this. I need a way to take the temperature of all my employees quickly. Great. Somebody's already done that. Do this. Oh, you need that? We've already done that too. Do this. So that's really where I think we were doing our heavy push-ups and sit-ups of this collaboration that's really come to its own now. Now it's just something we do, I like to think. But that's a really important part of how we manage the businesses, or maybe how they manage us.
Did your organization change during COVID, or did your policies and procedures that you had put in place on purpose allow you to kind of guide that really unknown obstacle that was in all of our ways?
Well, I think I'd love to say that we had this all in place and we just had to flip the switch and turn it on. But I think COVID forced us to do things differently and think differently. But I will say that we were thankfully prepared in terms of our IT infrastructure here at Cypress to be able to quickly do that and then make recommendations to the companies. But companies also made a lot of recommendations to each other and us, and we just served as the conduit to make sure that that communication flowed. So I think it made us a lot better than we were. I think if I had to pick a word there, it'd probably be intentional. It made us, when you got to get online with somebody and talk to them, you have to have a better idea of why you're meeting, what you're going to talk about, as opposed to just dropping in their office down the hall. Both are good, both have a purpose, but I think our intentionality got better during that time, and that's continued to be the case.
Yeah, and I've heard that from many business owners and business leaders is like, we learned a lot from COVID, but COVID learned something from us too. We knew what we were doing, and we had to change, but we had some principles in place. And so I'm interested in some of the hurdles, some of the things that you've had to overcome along the way as an organization. Maybe you have as a person. You're kind of, I think we're going to get to the idea that your entire organization is on purpose. But I'm interested in some of the hurdles that you've overcome as you've grown.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of them is, like I mentioned, the wonderful culture that this group benefits from, and I give all the credit back to our founder who put this in place decades ago, and we've enjoyed that. But as I spent a little bit of time here, what I came to realize is that we may have been being a little bit passive about performance, and I think if you want to liken it to agriculture, we were happy when it rained and the crops grew, but we weren't necessarily doing everything we could to proactively irrigate and make sure that the crops grew, even if the weather wasn't ideal. And so I think first and foremost, we've always looked at it as, maybe like a doctor with the Hippocratic Oath would, which would be first and foremost, do no harm, because we have this wonderful culture underlying what we do. However, we have recently in the last couple of years started to be more explicit and intentional about performance expectations. And there was some hand-wringing with that, I will say, but honestly, I think every single one of the leaders of the companies has come back to me at one point or another and said, thank you for that. Like we actually appreciate knowing what the target is, where we're aiming, and that you're here to help us do that. And that's also another really important part of how we operate, which is Cypress is really big on the what, but we leave the how up to the companies all the time. Another example somebody gave to me is that being on the board of directors of company is an opportunity to look in a window, but it is not a door. So we never view ourselves as walking through a door and going in and starting to do things at the companies. There are times where we've been invited to do that, but for the most part, we're looking through a window, providing observations, asking questions, and leaving the how, up to the company itself.
Yeah. And that is so key because we talk about culture and it's like, yeah, we're going to work on our culture. We're going to work on, but this is different for you guys because tell me if I'm wrong, but these aren't companies that you started. These are companies that you've come in to help build. And they already had a culture, and let's assume it was a good one, and they already did things, and let's assume it was different than the way the other 3 or 4 or 5 businesses.
Yeah.
How do you step in, walk in, and create a culture that everyone can live within?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say for part of our companies had been held. One of the aspects of Cypress that's a bit different is we tend to hold on to companies for a very long time. So one of our companies, the oldest company we bought in 1982, 2 others we bought in 1990. That is not typical of the private equity industry more broadly, and we're very proud of that. So in some cases, we had companies that have kind of always been with us, it feels like. But we have acquired new ones, and your question is spot on because that's usually a key challenge right away. And so 2 things we do explicitly about that. One is that we gather intentionally twice a year. So we bring the management teams, in our case, this is about 50 or 60 people. We bring them together for a few days at a time and usually split the time up between work, where we're giving presentations and asking questions of each other, and then play, like pure play, where it's playing golf, paintball, racing go-karts, rock climbing, kayaking, you name it. And a lot of that is so that these relationships start to form and the new people in your example are rubbing shoulders with the old people and getting a chance to ask questions, what are these Cypress people all about? And should I like them or not? And what happens when, and that sort of thing. So a lot of it, we try to create situations where it happens naturally. And I will say also, when we have acquired companies, we always offer the selling founder of the business the chance to talk to any of our management team members. We encourage them to do that, to ask questions. They don't take our word for it. Go talk to these people who've been working with us for decades and ask them your questions. Because you can imagine that's a huge decision to sell your business and turn it over to somebody else. I'd say in closing, like the other thing we do is, and Sandler has been helpful to us with this, but we've tried to create a common language of business between the companies. So, for example, we measure profitability at the highest level of all our companies on a contribution margin basis, and we define that specifically. Sandler, in the realm of sales and growth, has a whole set of concepts and language that are used to define how that works. A couple of our companies are now going through EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is a similar framework related more towards creating accountability and clear communication. But having these common frameworks and language helps people from one company easily interact with people from another because they know that they're speaking the same way.
Did you I assume that each of the companies has their own Sandler rep to help them, and the language is the same, of course, because it comes from the same spot, but
Right.
do they work maybe the same person or whatever, but that's how you set it up?
Yeah, it's not the same person for all 5. They have, in some
Okay.
cases, they have specific people who are uniquely suited to a specific situation, maybe giving their own professional experience or past experience with the company. But we did our first round with Sandler back in 2012, I think, and I went through it myself. It was a wonderful experience. And then a bunch of time passed, and then we kind of did a refresh, and we're back in again. So they're a key business partner of ours.
In your experience, and how many employees now are within the umbrella?
About 650.
About 650. In your experience, what makes a great culture? What's one, maybe you can give advice. How do you know when things aren't quite right? And what's one thing that you can do from the top that can actually improve the opportunity to kind of gel up a little bit and make that culture even better for everybody?
Looking at the typical salesperson, everything they do day in and day out, if we simplify all of that and really boil it down, they have two superpowers. First superpower that salespeople have is how they behave. Second superpower they have is what they say. As a seller, we only have two problems. We either said something or did something that we should not have said or done, or we didn't say something or do something that we should have said or done.
I think, when we walk through a company for the first time that we might be looking at, we look very closely at the body language of the people on the shop floor. And you can see it right away when people are not looking up, not smiling, not interacting with the people who might be touring us around. And that usually is not a great sign. As contrasted to when you walk around and people are asking about how was your weekend, or talking about the game that just happened, or what have you. So you can kind of see it when they make eye contact. The ingredient that I think is really necessary, and I've seen it when it's been missing, I would say is vulnerability. Like people being okay with being vulnerable, particularly on the management team, because I think we've seen a number of instances where it was not okay to be that way. And so people would sort of quietly sit there with all sorts of thought bubbles above their heads, not saying a word because they were afraid of being wrong or not the right time or what have you. And so I think we really try to create an environment where people feel comfortable to speak their mind, even if it might not be popular. And I think that's a big part of what some of the transitions of our companies, how they have transitioned from when they first got to know us towards working with us. I think also, and my business partner has spent a lot of time doing this, and he's very good at it, is when we have, in some of the companies we've inherited, they've been led by a strong founder, right? I mean, to start a company, you got to be a pretty strong individual. And so that sometimes can create an environment where the team is waiting to be told what to do. And then when we come in and flip it around on them and say, we want you to tell us what to do. You are the experts in this industry. Where have you been constrained? Where do you need more capital? Where do you need more people? Where do you need more technology? You tell us. And it's funny because invariably it's taken a year or two sometimes to get people to believe and say like, oh, you were serious? Like, yeah, we want to know your opinions and what you think. But that can be hard if you've been kind of raised through an entirely different paradigm of a strong founder-led culture. And so we, try to celebrate the victories and give credit where credit is due. When we get an idea from somebody and do it and it works, say like, hey, brought to you by you. Thank you. What else you got? And that's served us pretty well.
You mentioned earlier, and you just talked about that. I was going to ask you, which comes first? Trust from do they have to trust you, or do you have to trust them first to build a culture, especially in a recently acquired or whatever growing organization? And it sounds like it's on you. It sounds like the onus is on the top to become trusted first, so that you can gain the trust of others. So, Is that accurate? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I think that is accurate in my experience. Thinking of an example where we walked into a company that we had acquired years ago, and it was our first meeting introducing ourselves to the employees. And it was early on a rainy morning, and we're in the cafeteria, and my former colleague is up in front of them, and this company's been through bankruptcy and like 3 owners in the last 5 years, not a good situation. And he's introducing our profit sharing program to them, where we take 20% of pre-tax profit and distribute it back to the employees at all of our companies. And there was open laughter in the room because they hadn't seen a profit in a long time. And I didn't blame them. And so we just kept showing up, and we kept going back and spending time and talking to people. And it wasn't long before things there turned around and we were handing out profit sharing checks. And I think, that's just one example. And obviously putting money in someone's hand is a pretty good way to maybe get their attention quickly, but it's much more than that, building trust. So I think a lot of it takes time of us being able to listen to people and then do what they're asking us to do. And so it's maybe an inefficient process, and we put a new piece of equipment on the floor, and now all of a sudden things are flowing the way that they knew they always could, but it's not a one and done. You've got to do it over a sustained period of time. And I just think it's just listening And I think an important part too is in that listening is going back to people and following up and telling them, you can't do everything that everybody wants you to do, but you can follow up and tell them, hey, you know what, we considered that idea, and there were three great things about it, but here's the one thing that maybe we didn't consider. So it's not right now, but we're going to hang on to that. So we do always try to follow up with people when they give us ideas.
I like the fact that without the trust, they're not sure whether you're all that you say you're going to be, and you keep going back and keep going back. And this may or may not be a fair question. Tell me if it's not, and we'll move on. Have you ever failed, misread the situation, thought that this was going to be that way? We just keep going, and yet it just still didn't work. You made the wrong call. And if so, what happened then?
I guess what I'm thinking about is a specific example with one of the companies where things had been going along great. And I think, Cypress, one of the tenets of the way we do things is as I mentioned before, we look through the window, we don't walk through the door. So we manage with a light hand, I would say, unless things require more. And in this case, this company had been doing well, growing really well. They had a couple of customers that really exploded. And because things were going so well, we carried on down the line. And what happened was those two customers started to suck all the oxygen out of the room, and they consumed more and more and more, and at the expense of probably the steady Eddie middle tier customers that had really served us for decades in this case. And we unknowingly let them walk away. We lost them. And so we became super concentrated in these couple of customers who then just started to leverage us. And, there wasn't one specific decision that happened along the way, but after a while we looked at this and said, you know what, our profit's not what it used to be. And we're getting a lot of complexity here that's driven into our business by these customers. How do we let this happen? And meanwhile, why growth is great, right? We're growing, the top line's growing, but the bottom line was not growing as quickly as it should have been. So what we found was in that case, the team had been there for quite a while and was not a collaborative team. It was a leader who was, administering orders to the rest of the company of what to do. So it was a tough decision, but we decided to make changes there. My partner went in and spent probably the better part of 2 years rebuilding the team into a group that collaborated, that communicated. I like the term, none of us is as smart as all of us. That's really what we were trying to build there. And to their credit, they did it.
See, that's amazing. And I hope people caught that. You talked about the problem you got into, and your next statement was, how did we let that happen? You owned it. And you didn't rehearse that. That's just the way you understood it. That's what happened. And your story changed from what I anticipated. I anticipated, we made the wrong call. This didn't work. That didn't work. We had to sell. It was unfortunate. No, you stuck with it because how did we let that happen? And now it's turning around. And I didn't expect that answer. And congratulations. That's the right way to get things done.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the we is a very important word in our culture. At no point, like I said, like we do not, we leave it up to the companies to choose how they want to do things. That was a specific case that required a little bit of a heavier hand because it just wasn't going the direction we wanted it to. But we, we're here to help them as they need it. But it's up to them to make the changes that they want to make, and they're doing it. It's a little bit more time, and this thing's really going to go. And I think their next great challenge is going to be how are we going to onboard all this volume? They specifically, a couple of our companies have these wonderful opportunities with data centers right now. And, talking about 50 to 100% multi-year growth rates that you just don't see in the industrial economy. So we are doing everything we can to capitalize on these opportunities because I don't know, they could be once in a career type opportunities. But being ready for that and having the muscle memory and the companies and the leadership teams to address these kind of challenges. To me, this is a positive COVID, where it's turning the company inside out, but in a good way,
So that's the hurdle that's coming is this never before seen opportunity for growth and how to manage that. It inspires this question, and this kind of we'll wrap up on this, Matt, if it's okay. Is your role to grow Cypress, or is your role to help grow the businesses that make up Cypress? I think there's a serious difference there, but what are you focused mostly on?
That's an easy answer. Our focus is always on the companies.
Perfect.
We Cypress are here by default to serve them, and our goal is to get them whatever they need within reason when they need it, and like I said, help to be the connective tissue between each of the companies. I mean, I think that is our strategic competitive advantage, is the fact that we are a group of 5 companies, and anyone in any job, there are 4 other people who are friendly people who will take their call with whatever their challenge or their opportunity is. And I think we want to use that to our advantage, and we try to do that. So we're the grease, and we try to listen very intently and make connections when possible.
And as you try to grow in the future, are you going to try to take advantage of this opportunity now and stick with 5? Or if a opportunity comes that looks ripe and perfect, will you expand? Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to say no.
Yeah.
And yet sometimes opportunities are so great. What's the future look like as far as that goes, as far as strategy for growth?
Yeah, we say no a lot.
Do you?
And it is a very powerful word. And I think, it comes through Sandler loud and clear, but a fast, firm no is the next best thing to a yes, so that you don't waste any time on it, as odd as that sounds. But I would say we are quite interested in doing add-on acquisitions. If there is a company that fits with one of ours, I think putting that in the hands of our trusted teams who know what to do with it is a safer and probably more profitable bet than plunging into a new industry that we may not know as well. So that's how I would look at it.
Maybe so. I know in all my careers in sales and things, it's always about who's new, who's next. The manager always wants to know what's your pipeline look like. And I always kind of liked really taking care of my current customers. I know that's not the greatest thing for a salesperson always to do, but I always felt that it was easier to hold on to a current customer and grow a current customer than to add a new one, and far less expensive. But it sounds similar, at least as you approach this next vein. If someone wanted to reach out to you, wanted to learn more about Cypress Companies incorporated in the things that you do, how would they do that, Matt?
Probably the best way is cypresscompanies.com. Contact us.
Perfect.
On our website.
That is simple and easy. And if people want to know more about Matt McGinnes, they can do so there. Matt, I want to thank you for being on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. I don't think we always get to talk to the higher ups of big organizations and things of that sort. And yet you make it easy to understand that we're all fighting the same battles at different levels, different, growth and stages. But it always comes down to people. It always comes down to doing the next right thing and helping each other out. Is that accurate, Matt?
I think so. I mean, I think I am much happier working on operational challenges at the business than, out hunting for the next deal to acquire. I like the interaction with our teams, and that's how I think of the job. This is the best job I've ever had, and I appreciate it every day because of the people I work with and the variety of challenges, and that there's no shortage of the latter. So
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate you being on the show with us today.
All right, Bryan, happy to do it.
That's Matt McGinnes. He's CEO and president at the Cypress Companies, Inc. in Akron, Ohio. We're so glad he was here. And we thank you two folks for being here. We thank you for listening every week and being a part of this. I hope you learned something today, even about yourself. I could do that better. I could do that different. I could think of that differently. Leaders help us with those things, as long as we're willing to pay attention and listen. So I'm glad we had this conversation today. Hey, you'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at bryanmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. This show is and has been and will hopefully for a long, long time be brought to you by the Ruby Group. Master the pressure, lead with purpose, deliver results. And until next time, no matter how high the pressure gets, stay on purpose.